Hello, my name is Michael Hunsucker with Heartland Bowhunter, and today I'm going to give you an update on how my season has been going thus far. That was the Michael Hunsucker AI for you guys. Test, test, bump, bump. Cool, but you can just sneak off that way. What are you doing?
I'm just making sure everything's good.
In your socks.
It's quieter. Let's make sure this one's recording before I go in. We don't call it good.
Just put your shoes back on. What's wrong with you?
We're good.
God, unreal, this guy. Savage, wet feet. All right, here we are. It is October 19th today, and we're here in Colorado, and it is unbelievable how quick season has already flown by. I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on how our season's going so far. Sean did an update a few weeks ago, and man, it's been wild. We're gearing up for the pre-rut and some of my favorite time of the year, but it's hard to believe how much season's passed and how great season has gone for me and my family. We've just had an unbelievable kickoff to the season, and so don't have much to complain about. But I want to talk a little bit about just kind of what we've done, what's worked well for us, what hasn't worked for us, lessons that we've learned. I mean, I've been doing this a long time and still to this day learning every step of the way. So starting into the Missouri season, obviously Sean touched on our North Dakota hunt, had a great hunt up there. That was our first hunt of the year, hadn't done that in a long time. And but kicking into the Missouri season, every year we have a handful of properties across the state of Missouri, born and raised in Missouri. So we have stuff that we own, we have stuff that we lease, stuff that we have permission on. And I like having a bunch of different farms because it gives you a bunch of different bucks and opportunities for random deer to show up, and you're not all concentrated on one property. But we do have our primary properties that we spend a lot of time on the management side of things and focusing on improving those properties, and that's super rewarding as well. But every year, going into the season, throughout the summer months, we're taking inventory, running trail cameras, trying to figure out what bucks we're going to target. And for me, I usually pick one buck and I go after him and him only. And especially this year, I had a buck called L3 that we had some history with over the past few years. He was going to be 5 this year, and we were going to go after him and target him. And boy, did he make a jump. He blew up. And this is Missouri, so we have a mid-November rifle season that makes it really tough for managing and getting bucks to that age class. And he was one of those bucks that just really, really, really blew up this year, and I could not wait to get after him. He was a homebody, lived in the core center of the farm, and I knew that we were going to have a good chance at catching up with him just based on the past few years of seeing him and encountering him and hunting him. But my primary focus going into the season was to get my wife a buck. My wife started bow hunting when we started dating and got into it, really enjoyed it, shot a few deer with a bow, and then when we had kids, priorities changed for her big time. With the little babies, just not time at all to get out. And then finally, once they started getting of age, 5, 6 years old, to where they were a little more self-sustainable, they were able to hunt. They can hunt at 6 years old in Missouri. So she has been very selfless, taking a back seat to the boys, and they've had a couple awesome years. Both boys killed their first buck, I want to say 2 seasons ago. They both killed their first buck. Camden killed his first deer at 6, and then killed his first buck at 8. Noah killed his first buck at 6. And, for them, we obviously manage properties. We kind of put expectations and standards on what we want to do personally. But for them, I just wanted to have fun and let them do whatever they wanted to do as far as what they wanted to shoot. Do they want to shoot a doe? Do they want to hold out for a buck? Do they want to shoot a forky? I mean, my first buck was a 7-pointer, and I'm sure you guys can relate to that. I mean, growing up, people weren't managing for whitetails. So, I wanted to be fun, and I didn't want to put restrictions on them, even though they were going to be hunting on our property that's pretty intensely managed. But the other thing too that I wanted to do was, I wasn't going to spoon feed him and put him in front of the biggest buck I had on camera, or one of the bigger bucks. I kind of steered them clear of those areas to where we could have good hunts, have entertaining hunts, but have bucks that were realistic and ones that they should start out with. So both boys killed their 2 years ago, killed their first bucks. Noah killed another great buck last year. Camden hunted with me hard. A handful of times. They're both in sports, football, basketball, and it just is tough to get out. So we have to kind of find those windows. But going into this season, it was Mama's turn. The boys said, "Hey, we're grateful for a couple great years and some good hunts, and it's Mama's turn." So my focus was on L3 and getting my wife her first buck in 12 years. So going into the season, I was really optimistic. Man, L3, when we were in North Dakota, was unbelievably regular. And it almost got concerning to a point where I was a little wondering why he was walking around in the daylight so much. And we had a great year for rainfall in the spring, even some timely summer rains. And one of the unique things about our property is that we had corn this year on all the tillable. And so usually I plant some smaller corn plots. And with the kids and Bridget, their maximum range being 30, Bridget maybe 40, I typically, try to plant a lot of smaller plots too. But as summer kind of went along and we got that last rain sometime in, I want to say July, late July, man, just drought set in big time. And so we planted fall plots. I did a lot of smaller plots for Bridget and the boys. And yet again, for like the third year in a row, we just got drought stricken and the plots were just terrible. But I knew in the back of my head that we had the corn. And in Missouri, several years ago, they changed the law to where it's called manipulate the crop. So you can go in and brush hog corn and hunt over that. And we have done that a lot in the late season stuff. We haven't done it a ton early season, but I knew, being that the primary tillable ground was all in corn, that would be a huge draw and a big food source. So there's so many benefits to doing the mowed corn, especially, like I said, with the smaller max range with the wife and kids. And when it comes to just the setup and access, it is just bulletproof. So going into season, we're in North Dakota. L3 is, daylight like crazy. We get back and he actually just disappeared. I want to say about 10 days before season. I think September 5th or 6th was the last picture that I had of him. And so in the back of my mind, I'm just wondering, did he, a lot of bucks were shedding velvet. Did he shed his velvet and relocate, which was unusual for him. He, like I said, was a homebody, spent all of his time on the, really in the center of the property. So I was just kind of wondering what was going on with him. And so when I got back from North Dakota, I knew to get set up for Bridget to hunt, I was going to mow some corn, and then hopefully L3 would show up and be around as well. So we had, looking at the forecast, kind of an odd forecast. We had some decent weather, I feel like, but a lot of southeast winds in the forecast. So this spot I knew was a great spot for access. We could access from the south, wind in our favor, and what I did was I mowed a path through the standing corn to the blind that we could walk standing corn on both sides, so no deer can see us coming in or getting out after the hunt. And then I mowed a big circle, not that big, I guess, probably about 40 or 50 yard radius circle, and I left a bunch of standing corn between the mowed corn and where the deer were bedding. So I mowed it close to the bedding, and I left standing corn so the whole area was blocked off from the visibility of deer. They wouldn't be able to see us coming in from their beds. And we got in there opening day and had a few different deer showing up, but there was one in particular that I really, really hoped Bridget was going to get an opportunity at. And as luck would have it, he made an appearance. Big 10-pointer that was 6 or 7 years old. So he was a buck that's been, I called him baby 10 because he was one of those ones that was hard to tell on age, but he had a really nice basket 10-point rack, and he just kept that same exact rack. He never really grew a ton over the past couple of years, and so he was a great mature buck, one that I wanted to definitely shoot that would be potentially running other bucks out of that area. And as luck would have it, he came in, and Bridget made a great shot on it and got her first buck in 12 years. So I was extremely proud of her, just because bow hunting is tough, man. She's had her ups and downs over the years, and it had been 12 years since she got a buck. So my season was made at that point. And so after that hunt, I knew that Noah and Camden were going to be chomping at the bit because of their sports schedules. Just so happened that Noah was the next one to be able to get out and hunt, and that was going to be on the third day of season. So opening day, Bridget kills. Third day of season, we go back to that same blind because there was a couple different bucks showing up still, and there was a buck called Captain Hook that Noah kind of just took a liking to. Obviously, who wouldn't? Big drop tine buck, and had a big funky thing coming off of his beam, and still held a bunch of velvet. But in the summer, he was just like, oh, that buck's cool. Like, I'm going to call him Captain Hook. And he was all about it every day when he woke up. Like, hey, Dad, has Captain Hook been on camera? Has he been on camera? And once again, southeast wind, perfect setup, snuck in there, 2 nights later out of the same blind, and Noah was able to make a great shot on that buck. So I couldn't believe it. I was just, on cloud 9. Bridget's tagged out, Noah's tagged out, and in the back of my head, I'm still wondering where L3's at. And I had a feeling that EHD could have been an issue. And so I started looking. Ponds, I checked the 2 ponds on the property, checked the creek. I did find a younger buck that was in the creek dead, that died, I assume, from EHD. And I did not come across L3. No pictures of him. So I'm hoping that, he relocated, shed velvet relocated, and he was going to show back up. And as luck would have it, a few days later, we were overseeding some plots, and some of the fall plots that did not produce. We had a rain coming, so I overseeded with some rye and wheat and some cereal grain type stuff. And I was seeding one of those plots on the buggy, and I got a whiff of something. And it was a weird deal. The wind was kind of swirling, and it took us a while to kind of find out where it was coming from. But we ended up smelling him and going up this creek, and sure enough, there he was, laying dead. So kind of a bittersweet, start to the season. Obviously had a lot of success the first few days, and to find that buck dead was it was kind of gut-wrenching, man. We do so much to get those deer, and they overcome so many obstacles at that age. And, when he was just so regular, so killable, I felt like, and to find him dead from EHD was kind of a bummer. So
Midwest Land Group has changed the way land is sold and is the only brokerage to offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you're looking to buy or sell property, don't before you talk to us.
My plans kind of got reset at that point. I was wondering what buck to go after. My number 2 buck was a buck that I call Solo. He's had a single brow tine most of his life. This year he had both brow tines, but he is an older, mature deer too, 6, 7 years old, and that was going to be kind of my focus. And I knew my window of opportunity with him was going to be somewhat limited, because every year, somewhere between the first 2 weeks or the last 2 weeks of September, he actually relocates and doesn't come back until November. And so I was like, all right, we're going all in on him. Ended up hunting him a few times, had him on camera, just not real regular, not a lot of daylight, didn't have much opportunity, and eventually he just vanished. No more pictures of him. And so I'm not worried about him. I don't think EHD would be the issue with him. I think he'll be back in November. So I shift focus from L3 to Solo. Solo disappears, and I don't really have a number 3 that I'm really wanting to go after. One of my other properties is really interesting that we hunt. We don't get a lot of deer that show up until acorns start dropping, beans turn, and bucks kind of relocate to this area. So I was hopeful that I had a couple deer on camera the year before that I was hoping would show up, and in the meantime I was going to hunt with Camden any chance that I got. And so we hunted a few times. I actually mowed some corn in another area, hoping that Solo would stick around and utilize that, and hunted it one time, like I said, but he never did show up. And so got out there with Camden, that same area, and there was 2 other bucks, a buck that I call Basket 10, and then a buck that I call Stanky Leg, because he's got a big scar on his leg. He got caught in a fence. And so those 2 bucks were ones that I think would be great bucks for Cam's second buck ever. And we got in there, wanted to hunt for one of those 2 bucks, and we sat there, and it was not ideal conditions, but we did have a little bit of a cool front, north wind, and we're sitting there, seeing some deer, nothing too crazy. And as the light starts to fade, Camden looks over and goes, Dad, there's a big buck coming over here. And so I look out of the blind to the right, and there's a nice buck, a nice 7 or 8 pointer. And I was like, oh, that's not one of the big ones, Cam, whatever. And he's like, well, we'll see what happens if he comes in. And then all of a sudden he looks over and goes, Dad, there's a monster coming. And so I looked out, and it was the Basket 10, and he came in, and it was last light. We probably had 10 minutes left, and just kind of worked his way towards us, quarter to the whole way, and finally gave us an opportunity. Got to where he was broadside, and I told Cam, all right, he's broadside. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and take the shot. And I hindsight, I should have been watching a little closer where his leg was in the position of the shot, but he made a perfect shot, tucked it tight to that leg, but his leg was back, and it was a little bit low, and so it was a little bit concerning. We didn't know what to expect. We checked first blood, and there was some blood, and we knew it looked pretty decent, but I didn't want to push it. A lot of times if you're low and you're behind the heart, you're in that diaphragm paunch, and that can be really tough blood trailing. And so didn't want to push it, so we actually went back to the house, ate some dinner, and I said, I'm going to go out and just take a peek at the first little bit of blood trail. The bolt was still in him from the shot, and so went along, started tracking. I found some good blood, so we went back to the house, grabbed the family, and went out, and he didn't go anywhere. Luckily, the arrow kind of kicked in and up. We were hunting from the ground, so it's a pretty flat trajectory, not coming down like from a tree stand. And so the arrow actually kicked in and up as it entered and got the heart and I think the bottom of both lungs, because he was only maybe 100 yards from where he ran into the timber from that spot. So unbelievable start to the season, right? I mean, 3 bucks. My boys are both tagged out. Bridget's tagged out. In Missouri, you can only shoot one before rifle season, and you can shoot your second one once rifle season starts. So they're all tagged out, and my focus was going to shift yet again. Like I said, I had that other property where some bucks started to show up, and I had two big mature 8s, and they're both similar size. One's wider and not as tall. One's taller, a little heavier. And so Sean and I actually went and hunted one of those bucks one night. We had a good south wind. I had good intel from the Reconyx cell camera that they were in there that morning, and got an opportunity at a buck. And I had not missed a whitetail buck, since, I can't remember if it was 2019, 17. It had been a while, let's put it that way. And kind of hectic, came from where we didn't expect him to come from. I just grabbed my bow, drew back, ranged, and with the Garmin sight, I can range at full draw. And I am a huge proponent of the Garmin sight. I get a ton of questions about the sight, what I think of it, how I like it, and I love it. I've never had any issue, never had a mishap with it. I'm very conscious of when I range to confirm, look at the range, make sure it's the proper range. So he comes in, I range, and he's coming towards another buck that was eating acorns in the timber and kind of aggressively coming fast, and he was about to jump the fence, and so I knew that was my opportunity. So I ranged him 2 or 3 times, 40 yards, and I settled in, and as I settled in, I must have held the range button. It came off the top of his back just a little bit, but I shoot, and the arrow just flies high, and I immediately was like, whoa, what happened? Did I pull that? I felt like I maybe yanked it high, and I didn't know what happened, and I looked down at the sight, and it says 46 yards. So that's totally on me. Like I said, the sight's set up perfect. The reticle, I got 40 yards several times. I just didn't notice that it shifted from 40 to 46 or 48 or whatever it was, and I actually ended up hitting a limb as well. But thankful for a clean miss, and wasn't too bummed. It's at that point, early October. I knew a lot of good cold fronts coming. And so, I kind of ate the humble pie and decided just to kind of wait and wait for the next opportunity. So October 10th rolls around, similar situation where I get cell camera pictures in the morning of one of the big mature 8s, several other small bucks, and you can just see him in the background, just all bristled up, and he's running around, pushing bucks around. They're starting to just tear up scrapes at this point, and so I was like, all right, late morning photos, they're going to be bedded close. This is a clover plot that is situated really nicely between 2 bedding areas. So close bedding, access is bulletproof. We come through cow pasture down the creek, pop right into the stand. One of my favorite stands. I've killed several bucks out of it the past couple years, and so we slip in there and have just an unbelievable hunt. Actually saw the buck come out. We had some does in the plot. He comes out, and he must have thought it was, November 10th, not October 10th, because he comes out, bumps these does in the plot, and I never get a shot at him. He bumps both of them off, grunting, like chasing them around, and goes back into the timber, starts eating acorns, and I kind of lose sight of him, didn't know what was going on. And we had a couple other small bucks come out, and they started sparring, hitting every scrape, making tons of noise, snort wheezing at each other, and I'm just praying at that moment, just make as much noise as possible, I know he's going to hear that and he's going to get angry. And sure enough, not long after they start making noise, I just hear a scrape in the timber just getting trashed. And I was like, oh yeah, he's got to be coming. He pops across the creek, comes out, and bullies all of those bucks all over the food plot behind this little oak tree that I can't shoot. And he hits every scrape in the plot. And I'm just watching, just waiting for my opportunity. The wind was a little bit starting to die and thermals were starting to drop. So I was a little concerned about that, but he comes in, hits this tree right in front of us, and I assumed he was going to walk to the left and go through this gap where I have a camera, and instead of doing that, he comes right to the base of our tree and starts hitting the scrape right below our tree. and my heart is just pounding out of my chest. I can feel, the wind dying, thermals dropping, and he, has his head up in the air, just hitting that licking branch, and all of a sudden he just like pauses, and I could tell he doesn't like something, figures something's wrong. He takes a few steps back, turns and kind of does a little trot away, and then stops and quarters away and gives me a shot and looks back, and I absolutely drilled him. We watched him crash in the plot, and that was the wrap for the Hunsucker family. All 4 of us tagged out before the middle of October, before the rut. So when it comes to October, you hear all the time people talking about the October lull. And obviously, when you get warm weather and conditions that aren't ideal, you have bucks that aren't moving great. But when you get those cold fronts in October, man, they can be magical, especially if you have the right spot, the right setup, and all that type of stuff. So unbelievable start to the season. Missouri, we're all tagged out, like I said, until rifle rolls around. So I spent the last few days in Iowa getting set up for a November hunt. Had some great hunts, actually. Passed up a couple nice deer, some nice 3-year-olds, passed up a really nice 4-year-old, and we just rolled into Colorado to hopefully take advantage of the cold front that's passing through here. So one of my favorite times of year to hunt, one of my favorite properties and areas to hunt here in the eastern plains of Colorado. We got some great deer on camera. So for you guys that are still hunting, that are getting, gearing up for the rut and that type of stuff, I mean, watch the weather, watch those cold fronts, and be in a tree, because now is one of the best times to kill any, one particular buck if you're targeting one buck. Before the rut, everybody loves the rut. It's exciting, it's fun. The deer, you get away with a lot more. They're moving a lot in daylight, but they get on a doe and they could be a mile, 2-3 miles down the creek, on different property, different farm, and it gets frustrating if you're trying to hunt one buck during the rut. So take advantage of these October cold fronts before we get into November, and hopefully you'll be successful. We're going to stay at it here in Colorado, see what we can make happen in Colorado, and then, like I said, we're going to head back up to Iowa. So one of my favorite times of year, right around the corner. Best of luck to all you guys out there. I appreciate you guys, tuning in. Hopefully you guys like these little check-ins that we're doing. Kind of offer a little behind the scenes and more information as to, why we're successful, how we're successful, how we whiff and miss a deer, and learn from our mistakes. But thanks for watching, and until next time, good luck. Hey, thanks guys for tuning in and catching this season update. Let us know in the comments what you think, if you have any other questions or what you'd like to see in future updates. So I'm sure we'll be having more of these come out, but appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll be notified when we drop future episodes. We've got a lot of great content coming out. We just released this episode here that we'll tag up in the corner for Dr. Seuss, a buck that Sean hunted in Kansas, a super old 9-year-old buck actually. So check that episode out and let us know what you think in the comments.